Well, good afternoon. I had a great day in Windsor, Essex yesterday. Businesses are opening their doors. People are going back to work. Local businesses and factories like Ford Engine Plant are making great Ontario-made engines and face shields. And I know many people across Ontario are getting back to normal. For many people across the province, a big part of their regular routine is going to the gym because fitness is more important for both physical and mental health. But for the past several months, going to the gym has not been an option. The risk has been too high. But today, thanks to the efforts of everyone in the province, the number of new cases is heading in the right direction. The time is right to open up our province a little more and help people get active again. Many of our gyms and fitness centers are run by small business owners. They employ hundreds of people, and they are a vital part of our local communities. We want to help every business we can get back on their feet and recover. So on the advice of the Chief Medical Officer of Health and other health experts, we're allowing gyms and recreation centers to increase their capacity limits as of tomorrow at 12:01 a.m. with additional public health restrictions. Up to 50 people will be allowed per room with physical distancing limits in place. These changes will give our business owners the flexibility they need to serve residents and hire back more workers. Our team has been working around the clock to make sure sports and recreation can get up and running safely. And as we head towards September, as our kids get ready to go back to school, whether it's hockey, soccer, or swimming, we want to get our kids and amateur athletes back to the sports they love. Getting these kids on the field, getting them back on the ice is more important that we get it done now. That's why I'm pleased to announce today our government is providing $8 million through the Ontario Amateur Sports Fund. This funding will ensure these organizations can continue delivering safe and quality sports programming for our kids and amateur athletes as parents head back to work and students head back to the classrooms this September. These changes and investments will help everyone stay safe, active, and healthy. With more sunny weather on the way this weekend, I want to remind everyone, please keep following the public health advice. We've been under 100 new cases a day for almost a whole week. Please keep it up. Practice physical distancing, wear a mask when required, and wash your hands frequently. Thank you, and God bless the people of Ontario. Now I'll hand it over to Minister MacLeod.
Thank you, Premier. For the past 7 weeks, I've been visiting heritage sport, tourism, and cultural institutions across the province to see firsthand the health and safety protocols these businesses have put in place to help stop the spread of COVID-19 and keep Ontarians safe. Sport and recreation is an important driver in Ontario's economy, contributing more than $12 billion and thousands of jobs to the province's bottom line. More importantly, these physical and social activities contribute to the health and well-being of all individuals and families across our province. This is critical as we reopen more businesses and people leave their homes after being idle for months. Clearly, sport is part of our cultural fabric. Whether we're cheering on our local OHL team, singing our national anthem after an Olympic gold medal, or celebrating another win by our Toronto Raptors, sports gives our young athletes something great to aspire to, and it rallies all of us around our flag and shared Ontario and Canadian identity. It is fitting then that thanks to our collective hard work, that tomorrow we are able to expand capacity at Ontario's sports and recreational facilities to welcome back more athletes and support small businesses. This means that gyms, health clubs, community centers, arenas, yoga studios, dance studios, and other fitness facilities will be able to welcome back more customers and, of course, more athletes. It is another step we are taking to support athletes to return to play and, in some cases, prepare them for the podium. This is an important step in Ontario's economic and social recovery. It's why we're continuing to invest in and work with our provincial sport organizations to further develop safe return to play protocols that get our amateur athletes back on the ice, back on the court, or back on the field as soon as it's safe to do so. The unifying power of sport is worth investing in, and it's worth protecting. I'll continue to work and challenge my federal counterparts to ensure that Ontario's 3.8 million athletes receive the proportional support they deserve. And we'll work across government to provide our sports and recreation businesses assurance that they'll be protected from added pressures brought on by COVID-19. In the meantime, I'll continue to travel the province to reinvigorate consumer support for our heritage sport, tourism, and culture industries.
Okay, we'll go to the phone line for questions.
Well, just right before we go to questions, I just want to give a shout out to Grocery Hero. They started in Toronto 4 months ago. They help connect volunteers with frontline healthcare workers to help pick up groceries for them and their families, because the healthcare workers are working around the clock. They're exhausted. The last thing they want to do is go home and have to make a meal for the kids and everyone. So 8,000 Canadians put up their hands, and they've made 4,000 matches. So that's 4,000 frontline healthcare workers who can focus on fighting COVID-19 and caring for patients. So thanks to Grocery Heroes. You guys are absolute champions, and that's a true Ontario spirit, and we'll be happy to take questions.
Okay, we'll go to first question.
Your first question comes from Alex McKean with the Toronto Star. Please go ahead.
Hi, Alex.
Hi, I think this question is for Minister MacLeod, but I'd be happy to hear from the Premier as well. I'd like to ask about, you've announced some support for recreational sports today. I'm actually based out of British Columbia, and here in BC, the government has introduced a measure where they're protecting amateur sports leagues from liability should athletes come and play sports and then contract COVID-19. I know that there are some sports leagues that we've heard from in Ontario who are hoping for the same kind of measure to be put into place, and so that these leagues that might not have that many resources of their own don't have to worry about potentially being faced with a liability to reopen during the pandemic. What do you think about that? Is that something that you're still considering doing?
Well, I'll pass it over to the minister, but I've talked to sports leagues, have contacted me personally, Etobicoke sports leagues where I live, and they have the same concerns. I'll pass it over to the minister. Do me a favor, say hello to my pal, Premier Horgan. That guy's a champion out there. The guy's an absolute champion. So next time you see him, tell him the Premier says hi.
Thanks very much for the question, and thank you, Premier. We are obviously working for the indemnity insurance piece to support our local athletic organizations across the province. We understand and recognize the value of the British Columbia model. Unfortunately, in Ontario, we do have a different situation as we do not own the insurance organization, as the relationship is much different here in Ontario as it is in British Columbia. But I continue to work with our Minister of Finance as well as our Minister of Attorney General to ensure that this will be dealt with in the coming months and hopefully in the coming weeks. And it is certainly a challenge that I've heard from all of our provincial sport organizations, everyone from minor soccer to minor basketball and others. So it's an area of concern that we do have, and one that we're working on trying to fix. Unfortunately, we cannot simply emulate the model in British Columbia, but it is something that we aspire to do.
Follow up?
I'm all good. Thank you very much.
Next question.
Your next question comes from Cynthia Mulligan with City News. Please go ahead.
Hi, Cynthia.
Hello, Premier.
How are you?
I'd like to talk to you about the back to school reopening. It feels like we're on round 5 of this, at least by now. Parents are still really concerned and uncertain of whether they should send their children back to school. I'm just wondering why, because I asked you about this a couple of days. You said you think about it or talk about it with your education minister. Why you're not following, say, Denmark's protocol, which was quite a successful reopening, and they staggered it very slowly. So the youngest kids first for a few weeks, and then the high school students maybe a month later. Why aren't you considering or doing that here?
Well, we are, and I'll pass it over to the Minister of Education, but we are staggering the opening, and it's going to be up to the local school boards to implement that. So we're doing exactly that, but I'll pass it over to the Minister of Education.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Cynthia. Yesterday, I put out a memo to school boards that essentially allow them, based on their request, to have a bit more flexibility when it comes to the reopening of school. The request is really to minimize having, hundreds of students on the first day of class, even though we're staggering start times and bus times and recess, and the end of the day, everything is being staggered. The semestering is changing in high school. But the bottom line is, notwithstanding that change, we've also said to them, we're allowing them to stagger the start for the first week, meaning if they want to do kindergarten and grade 1 on day 1 and then introduce the grade 2s and 3s in the next day and sort of build that up to Friday, that is fair. And of course, we understand the principle behind it, which is to minimize contact, to maintain the integrity of these cohorts as they get into class. So that flexibility is being provided, and it's also being bolstered, to be fair, by additional investment, by unlocking that $500 million we did yesterday to reduce those classroom sizes, to increase spacing, and to support ventilation improvement. Because based on the public health available research that we have, air quality and flow is important. And it was, in fact, one of the top requests and one of the top areas of priority made by public health. And so we put an additional $50 million in, trying to come up with a made in Ontario model, given that there's been many challenges around the world in virtually every reopening. I mean, there isn't a democracy on earth, with some exception really, that hasn't had challenges getting children back in. And I think that's an admission that we have to be flexible, we have to be evidence-based, and we have to be listening. And I think what this government has demonstrated is that we're trying to do that every step of the way. Each and every week we've been up here, building upon our plan, leading the nation in masking. I understand Nova Scotia just put out a masking policy that follows Ontario. We are the only province to mask from grade 4 and up. Now they are following that with some augmentation to their protocol. The fact is, we are leading with the recognition there's always more we can and will do. And I think the Premier has been very clear that we'll continue to do more based on the evidence, based on the science, just to keep these kids safe.
Follow up.
But Minister, with respect, what I'm talking about is a lengthier staggering. For example, the earlier grades for 2 weeks, then you assess if there are any issues and then you bring in more grades.
Right.
My second question to you, though, is about class sizes. I know that you are giving boards the opportunity to go into their reserve funds to lower class sizes with more teachers and leasing more space. What will you do, though, if there are some classes that remain in the high numbers, in the 30s, for example? What will you do? Will you allow that class to go forward?
We've been clear in our guidance. We want 1 meter of distancing supported by masking and the other layers of prevention that have been supported by public health. What I have also been clear is, before the announcement yesterday, is this government stood alone in the country in adding $30 million for the purpose of hiring more educators, because we recognize that may be required, particularly, as you noted, in some of those classes that may have larger class sizes. And what we did yesterday, following the request of many boards in the province, is unlocking cash on hand, money that is ready to be spent, a rainy day fund, if you will. And I would argue this is the realization of that rainy day. We should put that funds to work. Let's ensure we do whatever it takes to maximize that spacing. $500 million is a massive infusion of investment that's going to help those school boards do one of two things, either with more hiring of educators or with more spacing. And in some, they're going to do all the above. That's why we provided the latitude to enable them to do what's right for their community based on the risk assessment, based on the local health authority that's going to have an opinion as well about how to maximize spacing. But the consensus position from public health has been, you have to do a multitude of actions, Cynthia. And I know I've mentioned this before, but it's important to note that the layers of prevention that we've introduced, from masking to testing, to screening, to the unique addition of public health nurses in our schools, to a $100 million net investment in cleaning of buses in schools starting this September, a one-time 1-year infusion of investment, altogether is a protocol that is robust, it's comprehensive, and it is fully endorsed by the most senior medical authority of our country, of our province, rather in Dr. Williams, the Chief Medical Officer, who has said, when asked the question on safety, that he would not endorse a plan unless it was safe. After all, he was the Chief Medical Officer who called me some months ago in March to advise closing them as a matter of precaution to keep kids safe. So we understand the imperative. We're going to continue to invest, and we're going to continue to listen to the medical authorities about how we could do more and further improve the safety of our schools.
Next question.
Your next question comes from Brian Lilly with the Toronto Sun. Please go ahead.
Hi, Brian.
Hello, Premier. I wanted to ask you about a story that CBC broke earlier today regarding Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation. As you know, 15,000 workers in casinos across the province, including many in your own riding, who work up at Woodbine, have been out of work for 5 months. And in the middle of this, OLG paid out a week ago, last Friday, they paid out big bonuses to their top executives. They're not releasing how much those bonuses were. They're not saying how much Stephen Rigby, who earns about $765,000 a year, was paid in bonus. But this is an organization that hasn't laid off anyone during COVID, while 15,000 workers that they regulate have been laid off. I'm wondering your reaction to hearing that they're taking big bonuses in the middle of a pandemic when a lot of people are just looking to scrape by, including many of their customers who buy their products.
Yeah, very, very good question, Brian. So I was told about this yesterday. I was on the phone with the chair of OLG this morning, and they're a separate agency, first of all. But you know something? They should have sat around the table, in my opinion, and thought this out. I know there's legal ramifications. They checked with finance, they checked with legal, and they said, well, this is for last year's bonuses before COVID came into place. But again, the perception, the reality out there, you nailed it. There's 15,000 people out of work, and the bigwigs are getting a bonus. Like, you got to think these things out, guys. You got to be sitting around the table and think, is this prudent to do this? And I understand the legal ramifications. I was told that, yeah, the lawsuits would be flying everywhere. Well, save it. Maybe this year, maybe they should forego a bonus. They're making big bucks. You know, maybe you forego a bonus. But I'm going to dig into this deeper. I only had a quick conversation with the chair. I'll talk to the finance minister as well. But it's just not good. It is not good at all. People are struggling out there. People working at the casinos. When I was down at Windsor yesterday, Brian, the first question I was getting is about casinos. There's a couple thousand people that are struggling, can't put food on the table, and they sit back on television, radio, and news and listen to these big wigs, the fat cats I call them, all making a fortune, 700 and some odd thousand. And by the way, we're gonna get a bonus. Guys, think before you start giving out all these bonuses. Like, give me a break. Like, they sometimes they just don't think. For all these big smart guys, they aren't too friggin' smart.
Follow up.
And Premier, I get what you're saying, but Peter Deeb, who is one of your appointees, is the chair of the board. He and his fellow board members had to approve this.
Yep.
Your finance minister, Rod Phillips, oversees OLG. You know, despite all the stories about Stephen Rigby in the news, he remains in place, even though he said he would resign over stories about expenses and different things. There's an audit going on, and he's still taking a bonus, even though they didn't meet their target for providing money to the province. So, like, are people that you've put in place, be it the finance minister, or Peter Deeb, or others, are they protecting people that are at the top, the fat cats, as you say? Because when you're looking at it from the bottom up, it looks like a lot of people feeding at the trough.
Well, I'm going to be very, very clear about this. The finance minister knows about this. He's going to deal with this issue. I talked to Mr. Deeb today, and I told him how frustrated I am about this. His reasoning was he went to legal, went to finance, and they talked to him and said there'll be lawsuits coming all over the place. But we're going to have to review this because it's unacceptable, in my opinion. Now, keep in mind, Brian, this is a totally separate agency that we don't get involved in directly. It's similar to the LCBO, OLG, OCS, a lot of these agencies. But guys, you got to start thinking when you're sitting around the table. You got to figure these things out. Believe me, I don't hold back on anyone. I don't care if it's my grandmother at the chair. They're getting a tongue lashing. Simple as that. You know, it's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. Brian, I agree with you 1,000%. This gets put on my table yesterday. I address it today, and I'm going to be on to him like a dog on a bone now. It's not fair to the 15,000 people out there.
Next question.
Your next question comes from Randy Rath with CHCH TV.
Hi, Randy.
Go ahead.
Hi, Premier. Between March and July this year, the Hamilton police issued 369 tickets to people drinking in parks. There's a McMaster professor and an infectious disease physician who says that that's just not right, that it's far safer for people to be out drinking in parks where they can socially distance, that they're going to drink anyhow, that it's better they do it out in a park in a responsible manner than in a home or inside anywhere. and then it also allows people that don't have outdoor spaces to go outside and have a beer.
Yeah.
What do you think? Do you agree with that?
I don't agree at this point about ticketing. We passed that legislation. We left it up to municipalities. If someone, someone and their buddy wants to go have a beer out in the park and they're responsible. The problem I have is when, as I've said in the past, a whole bunch of yahoos, 1,000 people are getting out there going wild. That's a whole different scenario. But I can't agree with, I can't agree with giving someone a ticket during COVID and they're stuck in an apartment. They want to be responsible. They stick to themselves, are quiet, and they have a cold beer. Like, give us a break, just a little bit of a break. The people of Hamilton, I got to stick up for you here, like, which I always do, by the way, but they got to be more flexible. Everyone needs a little bit of breathing space and go out there. And again, if you're responsible and a few of you are sitting down there and you want to have a little glass of wine or a can of beer, big deal. Who cares? Like, if you aren't rowdy, what's the difference, Randy, between, they're making it legal to go out and smoke a joint, a doobie, a reefer, whatever the heck they call it nowadays. I wouldn't want my kids walking by with a bunch of guys smoking cannabis or marijuana. But if a couple of guys are sitting there quietly on a picnic bench having a cold little beer, who cares? Like, honestly, it's no big deal. That's just my personal opinion. Hamilton, they'll do what they want, but I got to protect the people of Hamilton.
Follow up.
So do you think that the police should simply look the other way, or should Hamilton mandate that it's okay to drink in parks? Are they capable of doing that under legislation?
Yeah, Randy, first, full disclosure, I love the police. I'm not blaming the police, blaming the city council and the mayor. Give these guys a break. Man, they're your constituents. They're cooped up in an apartment and sometimes for months. And where are they going to go? Just stick in their apartment, have a beer? Let them go to the park. Have a little bit of flexibility, Mayor. Come on, give them a break.
Next question.
Your next question comes from Sara Hamud with Kenora Minor and News. Please go ahead.
Hi, Zora. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
I was wondering if you were aware of Red Lake 49, the large forest fire that started this week in northwestern Ontario, and I was wondering what the province is doing to support all those affected, including those living in the Red Lake area.
We have the Ontario Management Emergency Team up there. We also have Ministry of Natural Resources all over it. I had a call the night it happened at 1:30 in the morning from the minister. And by the way, Minister Rickford has been an absolute champion up there. I just got off the phone briefly, a real quick conversation with the mayor. I'm going to call him back, Mayor Moto. But do you know what burns me up about this? Excuse the pun, but these folks are struggling. There's a fire at Red Lake and everyone's evacuating. So they go to the closest town, Dryden. And what happens in Dryden? They go to Comfort Inn. It's advertised $10 a night on their website. And then the Comfort Inn in Dryden starts gouging these guys. They put it up to $400. So if I'm not mistaken, Comfort Inn is a massive franchise around North America. I got to call headquarters, and they better refund every single, because guess what? It's the taxpayer that's paying for this when we relocate people. And here they go, the greedy people that want to gouge these desperate people and charge them $400 a night when you're advertising $110. You think that's right? I don't think it's right. They're gouging the taxpayers, they're gouging the people. So, whoever the franchisee owner is, I'm calling headquarters, going to tell them, get your act together. Then nothing drives me more crazy than people taking advantage of other people and gouging them and just gouging them. It makes me sick. Like, guys, how many times do I got to get up here? Business owners, stop gouging people, or there'll be the further consequences. So Comfort Inn, get your act together.
Follow up.
How was the issue with Dryden, or was the Comfort Inn in Dryden brought to your attention?
Because I got phone calls saying, hey, they're advertising. And then I just spoke to the mayor and I said, I hear there's gouging up there. He goes, yeah, it's a Comfort Inn in Dryden that's advertising $110 a night online, and they're getting charged $400. So that is just wrong, absolutely wrong. And I just can't believe people have the nerve to do this. the gall of them. I just can't believe it.
Okay, last question.
Your final question comes from Lucas Meyer with News Talk 1010. Please go ahead.
Hi, Lucas.
Hi, Premier.
Sorry, I'm on a
thank
little
you,
rant
Brian,
today, but I apologize. But man, I just can't stand when these people are just doing ridiculous things. Sorry about that. But go ahead, Lucas.
Loud and clear, Premier. Thank you, Brian, for asking about the OLG. Premier, I did want to get your thoughts on another non-education issue, the situation at the brass rail. 500 people maybe being exposed, and obviously contact tracing going on. And the club apparently cooperating, though our colleagues at CP24 are now reporting some violations, apparently in terms of social distancing, contact log tracing. Considering you have to keep community infections down, so things like schools can go, does this make you overly anxious, or are we bound to have incidents like this and it's about follow-up?
Well, it's about follow-up, and we're going to show how contact tracing works. We're going to be contacting everyone, and that was over at this location, and we're going to follow up. They have to get tested. If there's 500 people, you got to practice social distancing. You got to put on a mask. I know it sounds ironic talking about that, but you have to. It's like any other business. They're a business. We got to treat them like any other business. And maybe we get the health inspectors to go in and inspect. But, what can I say about that? They got to follow the protocols. That's it. Stay, practice social distancing. I know it sounds crazy, Lucas, when you're talking about the brass rail, but you just got to do it.
Follow up.
I feel sorry for the people when they go to their house and tell them that they were at the brass rail. That's who I feel sorry for. Sorry for the spouse. Seriously, man, I wouldn't want to be on the end of that one. I don't even have to
it's hard to transition. It sure is interesting transitioning back to kids after that, Premier, but I will.
Okay.
To Minister Lecce, actually, I do want to go back to what Cynthia was asking before, because I'm not sure if that was made completely clear. So really, quite simply, two things. If a board asked you, we need more than a week, let us stagger, for 2 weeks with a couple of grades, and then later on some other grades, not just the first week, but beyond, would you be okay with that? And B, would you be okay with a 30 pupil classroom?
Well, we want to ensure distancing of at least 1 meter as per the public health advice. We also want to ensure that the masking is in place for all students, which is why we've imposed that mandate. So, the quantum is, sort of not the fundamental issue. It's the distancing. We want to ensure distancing can be respected, at least 1 meter, coupled with all the other preventative measures we put in place to improve safety. With respect to the question on start times, I've already indicated a flexibility for the first week. I'm open to working with boards. Look, if this is about public health imperatives, if they believe it's really important to take a few extra days to restart the school year, stagger the start to reduce the volume of kids coming into those schools, I'm going to work with them in the partnership of keeping the kids safe. And I've already indicated, and in fact, we've already confirmed to boards via a memo last week, or rather yesterday, that we would do that, specifically the first week. I'll work with boards if they think they need a tad more time. I know that there's an overall broader imperative to get kids back into class. We know that for their wellness and their development and their mental health, but we're going to be flexible, we're going to be reasonable, and we're going to be evidence-based according to the public health recommendations to make sure that we do this safely, we do this right in September.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend. Stay safe.